expecting?
There's 3 other speakers. So someone from Massey, the Regina Coeli hostile occupation, and someone from the microgroup.
So Dermot, to clarify, only mostly the speakers and the chair will be in the meeting itself, and all our members will watch it live streamed on YouTube.
All right, they won't be present here now.
And any questions the people watching have in the comments,
Right.
we'll pass them on to the speakers, and to the panel.
All right, okay, good idea. Yeah, good idea. Man. That's an interesting technique. Yeah, I haven't done that before.
It's because there could potentially be lots of members, so
Right.
our Zoom account doesn't have that capacity.
Mm-hmm. Where am I speaking to you now? You're in Cork, no?
Yes.
Cork.
What's the weather like in Clare today, Dermot?
It was grand up till about 4 o'clock, and then it started raining. And it was cold enough, really. But cold compared to what we had last week. Like last week,
Same
we
here.
had 15. Where are you ringing? Where am I talking to you from?
It's Cork as well. Yeah.
Oh, you're in Cork, you're Cashman.
Yeah,
You're
I
Cashman.
actually only found out more about my surname over the last week or so. I didn't realize it was just more like just pretty much a Cork and Waterford thing. I didn't realize until
Oh, the Cork name, yeah,
this week,
definitely.
yeah.
I lived in Cork one time, and there was a lot of Cashmans, yeah.
We're an infestation.
Are you in the city? Oh,
yeah, just by the bus station.
Oh, the bus station got off and walked over there. My God, sometimes I walked over there. Yeah, that's nice. There's a good service now. The bus station in Cork, always the best.
Yeah, a lot of noise as well.
Oh, I'd imagine for you, like, a lot of noise. But I used to be fascinated with all the buses going off the Bantry and all the West Cork and all the remote areas.
Yeah, no. I think because of the fact that it's on my doorstep, I don't actually use it as much as I should do. And, I'm just hanging around the city most days.
Oh, yeah.
Too busy, too much to do.
Well, we should do a road trip to Clare, Kevin, to help them get the union started there.
I'd love it. I've actually never been to Clare, which is really embarrassing for me.
Have you not? Good.
No.
How'd
you know? Yeah.
Good. Well, you really with me, okay. Yeah. Well, Rory Gallagher, the man sticks in my mind. Rory Gallagher, Cork, 1985.
You saw him in Cork in 1985?
In Macroom, yeah.
Nice.
That was some big.
He went to my school.
Oh, he went to your school, yeah. Oh,
Apparently he was kicked out for having long hair. I'm not sure how true it is, though.
Yeah. God almighty, he's amazing character. Amazing musician, really.
Yeah.
Messing with the kid, huh? Messing with the kid. Hometown, yeah.
Dermot, if you can adjust a bit your microphone so that it's a bit louder for when you get to speak, which will be in a little while. But just you're a bit quiet there. If you can adjust your microphone a bit.
Oh yeah, well I can. Yeah, well I mean that's my voice as well. But yeah, I'm on my mobile,
All right, but now it's better. Now it's already a bit better.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. And how many members have you now?
Oh, we have 1,600.
Wow, Jesus God. And growing. Yeah, I must pay my membership fee now myself.
Well, Nisha here, there are admin officers, so they can tell you exactly how much growth we've had.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much double in 12 months, which is great.
Badly needed, yeah.
Yeah.
Badly needed.
Let's see if we can make it to double that as well over the next year.
Easy.
Nora, did you manage to get onto the local radio stations here in Fair?
I haven't had the time yet. It's planned. I'll chat to you after this.
Okay.
We'll plan it. But thanks for all
Oh,
the contacts.
the radio station I work for now would love to have you. Yeah. You can speak about for 15 minutes.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
How often do you have your show on air?
I have my show on a Tuesday and it's repeated on a Thursday.
All
I
right.
could be on more often if I wanted to, but I don't want to be on more often. I'm happy for that.
What's the reach of your show, Dermot? Do you mind me asking?
Well, sure, on internet now, you could do anything really anywhere in the world. But next Tuesday now, I have the Palestinian ambassador on.
Oh, great.
She was in Ennis, yeah, so I got a chance to interview her, and I had the Cuban ambassador a couple of weeks before that as well. So whoever comes into town, like, gets to know them and gets to chat to them. It's interesting. Yeah.
That's
I
great.
asked her about a story about somebody asked me to ask her about gay people. How did the gay people there, like, really? So I thought she answered it very well now. She said, "You're 100 years old. Ireland is 100 years old. It's only about 20 years ago, or maybe 15 years ago, that Ireland brought in legislation to decriminalize gay people. So they're a very conservative country. Like, I mean, you're talking about Muslims by and large." And she said, "We're only a young country yet." Interesting the way I thought she handled it very well on the interview.
That's
The
great.
only thing we export to Palestine is powdered milk. I didn't know that. No.
That we import, is it?
We export to them
What do we export? Powdered milk.
powdered milk, yeah.
I don't think I've ever had powdered milk.
So it looks like some of our speakers might be running a bit late. How do people feel about starting the panel now? And we can there's like a few, I think 3 questions at the end specifically for Dermot about the kind of organising that he's doing. Maybe we could start with those if people feel all right. And then I'll see if I can get any questions going in the chat as well.
Is this the first AGM, is it?
Second.
I think
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nisha.
Kevin, yeah, just to let, I'm just going to click record now if that's all right with everyone.
Yeah, perfect. Hi, Impo, are you there? Would you mind, Impo, if you just turn on your mic just so we can make sure if we can hear you?
Hello.
Hi,
I should
how are
turn
you?
it on or off.
Oh, it's up to you, whichever you prefer.
No, I'll turn it off. Sorry, hi. I don't know why my picture is not, why my camera is not responding. Maybe it's my network. I don't know.
That's okay. You've got an air of mystery. So look, I suppose we can start now. I'll go ahead and we've got 2 of the speakers in so far. There's planned to be 4, so hopefully the 2 additional speakers will show up throughout the next few minutes. So we'll start with Dermot. Dermot Hayes.
Okay.
He's a member of the Clear Leader Forum. The Clear Leader Forum, for anybody who's unfamiliar, is an independent group of people with disabilities who are working to provide a voice on disability issues in Clare. They work towards justice and equality for everyone based on a philosophy of rights, not charity, and nothing about us without us. They are part of the independent living movement whose aim is that disabled people achieve choice and control over their lives and full participation in society as equal citizens, promoting a rights-based social model of disability instead of the unacceptable charity and medical model of disability. So thanks very much, Dermot, for joining us. It means a lot. So the first question that I would ask, I'll take the ones now just that are specific to you at the moment, just because there's some that are addressed to everyone. But I'll start by asking, The Clare Leader Forum has long been fighting against the forced institutionalisation of people with disabilities in Ireland. How widespread is this practice, and how does it tie in with the lack of adapted public housing for people with disabilities throughout the country?
Well, just to give you a few stats first of all now. Thank you for having me tonight, actually. It's a great honour to be here now. Let's give you stats just to let people know, because people are not fully aware. There's over 643,000 people with disabilities in Ireland, okay? That's quite significant. So that's 13% of the population at any day, right? Now, to answer your question, how many people are in institutions today? Like between nursing homes, there are 1,500 people under 65 in nursing homes, and the rest then up to 2,500 people are in institutions. And a lot of those people would be mental health, not mental health, but intellectual disabilities, really. So, but in the 90s, you must remember now, we're just coming out of this. So in the 90s, the early 90s, there was up to 25,000 to 30,000 people in the institutions. And I mean, it's no surprise like that. When you look at the Magdalene laundries and those cases we've had over the years, over the decades, since the 40s and 50s, people with disabilities were locked up basically and put in institutions out of the way, like really. So we're coming there now at a situation where a lot of people with disabilities are now questioning the whole question of the charity model, which is great, really. And there's thousands of and hundreds of people, organizations that use the charity model on today. Like, but you know, there's a growth in independent living around the country, and with the independent living movement of Ireland network, which is based in Dublin, which we are a part of, really, it's developing a lot of links and encouraging people to speak out and get support, really. So it's essentially, really, a lot of people with disabilities, like anybody else, would need a support in terms of accessing services. And historically, a lot of people with disabilities would not have gone to third level education, really. So there's only a very tiny percentage of the population. Say, for example, 37% of people of working age disability are only working, compared to 73% of the population. So that will give you an indication, really, of what I'm talking about. And also the fact that now that we have the UN Convention in Ireland, and UN Convention is an international agreement, and while we have a lot of the parts of the UN Convention implemented in Ireland, there's still a few parts that still not implemented. But Article 19 particularly talks about independent living, really. And this agreement, the government has support every 2 years for the government under the United Nations as regards what they're doing about the UN Convention in terms of implementing the agreement and in terms of helping people to be more independent and to provide services, really. So 27% of people with disabilities are homeless, make up the homeless list. I mean, 27%, which is a significant amount of people, really, in any day of the world. And a lot of people that with disabilities are heading households that have disabilities, live in poverty by and large, live in poverty. So in order to acquire accommodation and get housing, it's very, very difficult, and it's very, very, and a lot of people with disabilities, adults, live at home with their families, which is not significant, which is not really the way to do things, really, for a lot of people that want to get out. But in order to get out, you need income, and you need a basic to either get a house, get a local authority house, or be able to rent. And as you know, rents are huge nowadays. There's no question of that. So the independent living movement last year did a study around the country, and they came up with a significant report, which is worth looking at, really, independent living movement on housing for people with disabilities. So it's well worth looking at that report, and it highlighted a number of things, and the thought in support from the Minister, Minister Anne Rabbitte. And what has happened now since then is supposedly now 7.5% of all new social housing and affordable housing will be made accessible, universally accessible for people with disabilities. So that's an important word, universally accessible, that people with disabilities can get into them and get around, no matter what size wheelchair is that around disability. So that's very important to say that again, I agree with. So, you know, that's where we're at a minute. So I'll leave it at that for a minute anyway.
Thanks very much, Dermot. Very informative. I wasn't aware of much of that information. I'm glad that you were able to fill us in. So what I might do at this point as well, I probably should have done it before asking my question, so apologies. But Impo, I'd like to introduce a member of MASI, Movement of Asylum Seekers in Ireland. MASI is a collective of current and former residents of direct provision, the system of asylum seeker detention in the 26 counties. MASI began with an occupation of the Kinsale Direct Provision Centre in 2014. Since then, they have been involved in numerous campaigns involving the abolition of direct provision, fighting for the right to work for asylum seekers, and assisting people to survive in direct provision. So just again, another person just doing just incredible work. This organization is just really exemplary. And thank you very much, Bo, for being here today. I'm sorry, my camera's froze up on me, so I'm not trying to be rude or anything. It just isn't working. So I suppose the question that I would ask for you, Impo, is there's currently, we've heard that there's a white paper on the plan to abolish direct provision. What do you think will be the biggest challenges facing asylum seekers if it is abolished?
Oh, hi, Kevin, and thanks for inviting us. It's really an honor to be here. The biggest challenge, I think it's a challenge that everyone, not just asylum seekers, are facing. Housing seems to be a big problem here in Ireland. So I'm just thinking, if there are about 8,000 plus people currently living in direct provision, and the white paper proposes to end direct provision by 2024, which is like 2 years from now. So the question that everybody is asking themselves, like supposing the system outside and beyond, is how will they absorb or find space for the 8,000 people? I know within the 8,000 it's families. I'm not quite sure how many families are there, but the number of people as it stands right now, it's more than 8,000. So it's a big challenge. And when you look at it from only not being a crisis in Ireland, for an asylum seeker or anyone who has received papers, for instance, to find accommodation in Ireland is very difficult. For instance, I'll speak about myself. I've just moved out of direct provision in January on the 14th. So I'm living independently. It feels very good, like I'm free. So, but it took me 6 months, and I believe I was very fortunate to find a place in that 6 months, because I know a lot of people who have actually been trying to find accommodation. One can create motivation, be called to interviews, and then when the landlords ask about like the recommendation or the reference from where one is coming from, and they ask for services, receipts and stuff like that. The minute one says, I don't have those, why don't you have those? Because I lived in direct provision. It's more like the door closes right in one's face right there and then, So it's quite a challenge. I don't know if I've answered your question.
No, of course you have, Impo, and I think I can speak on behalf of everyone when I say congratulations on being able to leave direct provision. I think the vast majority of people here know how terrible those conditions are, and it really puts you, I think, in a unique position to be able to really combat this issue and to inform us about it. So my next question, I'll go back to Dermot again. We haven't seen any more of the speakers come in yet, so I think we're going to be bouncing between the two of you for the time being. So Dermot, the Clare Leader Forum has recently criticised the government's disability capacity review, which was issued last year, on the grounds of it being ableist and prioritising residential care over independent living. Can you explain what a public policy supportive of disabled people's right to live independently should prioritise, in your view, and how could our union support this struggle in our communities and nationally? You're just muted there as well at the moment, Dermot.
Okay. This has been an ongoing issue, really, to provide personal assistance, okay? And personal assistance is a thing that has been came about in the early 90s, where people with disabilities want to get on with their life, but they might need assistance, right? They're not a carer, they're not a home help, they're a personal assistant, right? to allow that person with disability to get on with their life. That's really, a lot of that is a huge issue there. So we're trying to get them to implement a bill that talked about in principle in 2019 of doing a bill, November 2019 of doing a bill in Dáil, and it's not yet implemented now. Some other countries in Europe have personal assistance, which enable people with disabilities to apply for. Now, while there's a few people in Ireland, when I say a few, like there's some 2,500, something like that, but they're all dependent on the IDWA or another organization, and it's subject to funding, all subject to funding. But currently they have what we call packages to, right? And packages might be 11 hours a week, might be 10 hours a week. In one or two cases, it might be 30 hours a week. That's one or two cases, which is rare enough. So what we want to do is to get that implemented into law, so people can get on with their lives. And as regards ableism, that whole issue there of the whole charity model comes in there, where people with disabilities will be shunted around here to there, like, and into training centres, which is kind of endless, really, the training centres, which end up with very repetitive stuff, not getting any qualifications, such just maintaining people there in the services, really, and maintaining the services. So that's really what we're looking for, the implementation of the personal assistance legislation, which will allow people to apply for personal assistance, enable them to get on with their lives, really. Not to be dependent on the family or friends to be helping out here and there, like that's what we want to get away from, that disability, that issue there on family and friends. I think, Kevin.
Yeah, no, that's perfect, Dermot. I really appreciate that answer. And look, I think that goes without saying that we in CATU are going to do absolutely everything that we can to help towards that.
Thank you.
So
well, it's important that we have solidarity among people, really. I mean, we're very lucky with the Clare PPC, CPN here in Clare, and with a few other organisations that we have great solidarity with the Clare Local Development, great solidarity with us as well. So that's very important, really.
Fantastic. We've had a new, I believe one of our speakers has joined. Would this be for the Regina, a hostel occupier? Is it Lucky?
Yeah, it's Lucky here.
Lucky. Sorry, is that so you're from Regina Chaley, I believe?
Oh, from Massey. Employees, yeah, from Massey. Yeah, I'm just joining you guys. I'm not going to participate, no.
Oh, of course. Yeah, sorry, no problem at all. Just had to make sure that our representative from the other organization has not actually confirmed their name yet, so I had to be completely sure. Okay, so my next question, if it's okay, would be I will actually pose it to both Dermot and Empo. Ireland has a long history of forced institutionalization, and though different, direct provision, direct provision and the institutionalization of young disabled people in nursing homes are two current facets of it. What kind of solidarity can, in your view, be effectively built between the directly affected groups?
Okay, I think just once people get to know what the situation is now. For example, there was a neighbour of mine here, 40 years of age, and she went into convalesce because she'd been in hospital for a while in a nursing home, and she's remained there now. There's 2.5 years on, and because her personal assistance and her home care was taken away and was never replaced, so she's stuck in the nursing home there all the time. Despite the best effort of many of us and a few politicians, bureaucracy really. So we do need a big movement behind you to get things changing, because the HSE and the nursing homes, it suits the nursing homes, because they're making money out of it and they're doing okay out of it. And just remember, you must remember, there's been a huge growth in private nursing homes in Ireland in the last 15 to 20 years. You have 3 types of nursing homes. You have the public nursing homes, you have the private nursing homes, and community nursing homes. And the private nursing homes have really got a huge foothold now in Ireland, and they're all being supported, and they all have to be, in order to make profit, they have to be filled all the time. So they're always anxious to get people into the nursing home, and they get so much ahead for people to be in there, really. So they have to be able to wash their face as well. So that's very important. So it does need solidarity between various organisations and understanding that young people's lives should not be lived in nursing home and institutions like that.
I echo every word that Damon has said, and I think it's very important that people who are suffering this plight should stand together despite of who we are or our cause. But above all, when people are in direct provision, the problem is like in the disabled people where they're institutionalized. It's institutionalization for everybody, and people are not free to live their lives as and how they are supposed to. But over and above, it shouldn't just be us who are suffering from this institutionalization. It should be a problem that is addressed by everybody, because people who are out there looking from afar may think it's not their problem, but actually for the government and for anybody to feel the pinch, it's if we are all in solidarity to fight this injustice, because when we are all united together, that's when we can achieve an intended goal, you know. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Also, I'd like to introduce Michael Doherty. Michael is a representative of the MICA Action Group. The MICA Action Group, for anyone unfamiliar, is an organisation of those affected by the MICA crisis across the northwest of Ireland. Mica is a material that absorbs water and causes the breakdown of blocks in buildings, and it was used frequently to cut building costs. Donegal has been the hardest hit, with many family homes crumbling. Michael was a key organiser in the massive Mica protest last year, which bussed down thousands of people from Donegal to take to the streets in Dublin, and a main negotiator with the government in the redress scheme for those affected. So thank you, Michael, very much for joining us today. It's much appreciated. Thank you. What I might do is I'll actually address my next question to you directly, Michael. For as far as the MICA group is concerned, how were you organised? The level of coordination to bring people to Dublin and how deeply embedded you were in your community was very impressive during the pandemic. So how how did you go about that? What was your process for building and organising that?
Yeah, okay. So first of all, my action group have been on the go for about 10 years. So it certainly wasn't a case of we just appeared and everything was successful and set up and we were right first time. Certainly not. It started around a kitchen table and I wasn't even there at the very beginning of it. But it became very obvious to us that when we joined the dots, there were many houses affected. It was the sort of thing that people sort of felt embarrassed by or almost ashamed they did something wrong, where in actual fact, all we did was buy houses in good faith or build houses in good faith, thinking that the blocks were okay and they actually weren't. So it took a long time. It took a lot of work with government to get to the point that we got at least a scheme up and running and announced in January 2020. It was meant to be a 90-10 scheme in that the homeowner would contribute 10% of the total cost and the state would contribute 90%. But the housing department, as they tend to do, behind closed doors, through the administrative guidelines and a series of caps and exclusions, managed to screw it down to a 60-40 scheme, which left homeowners out in the region of about €100,000. So it simply wasn't doable. And I think when it gets to the point where you're saying enough is enough, it's amazing what can happen. And I think it wasn't just a case that we felt as MICA Action Group enough was enough. We had a lot of people sitting on the edges of their chairs going, this is just not right. And in this early summer of last year, we had the injection of one individual, and he wasn't in the MICA Action Group, a guy by the name of Paddy Diver, and his name was infamous at this stage. But Paddy Diver one morning saw a lorry belonging to the quarry that caused 90% of the problems in Donegal, and that's about 6,000 to 7,000 homes. Reverse up past his lane to the neighbour, and he had just opened an envelope with a quotation for his house that showed he was going to have to find over 100,000 for a house that he'd already spent years travelling forward and back to England to pay for. And he had enough, and he just drove his Jeep out across the road and said, that's it, you're not getting out of here. And that was that. And it's he would have called him locally the WhatsApp king anyway, because he was all into his WhatsApp, but what he did do then was record that. It went viral, and very quickly gathered momentum. And you know, before very long, there was a site beside us with probably 70, 80 houses that a contractor was building. Some of it was for social housing again. And ironically, the social housing was to rehouse people that were coming out of mica affected homes, and the same supplier was supplying the new replacement homes as what had supplied the original defective homes, quite unbelievably. And he said enough was enough. So that was it. And you know, in a matter of about 2 hours, one Monday morning, we had the road blocked, the lorries were all stopped, and a boycott campaign was launched to inform customers of what was being supplied, and to call out the fact that the local authorities are still using these suppliers, or this one particular supplier that caused the biggest end of the problem. And that supplier is no longer in business and no longer supplying blocks, only because the campaign closed them down, as opposed to the authorities coming in and stepping in. So to this day, they would still be supplying defective blocks if it wasn't for our campaign. So I think people saw a win. They saw somebody very ordinary, as an ordinary guy that worked on sites, that had enough. He stood up, he was prepared to be counted, and we partnered with him, being quite honest. And that was a brilliant partnership. It left us that we had more bargaining power at the table when it come to dealing with the department officials and government officials. And we always had that threat hanging over there. And we worked very well together. Some people described it as the bullet in the ballot, or the sort of good guy, bad guy, or good cop, bad cop, call it what you want, but it worked well. And we managed to gather an awful lot of people. But like I said at the start, I think they were sitting on the edges of their seats. Enough was enough, and they were ready to go, because these people did nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong. They bought and paid for their houses, or were still in the process of paying for their houses in good faith. And through lack of regulation by government during Celtic Tiger times, they adopted this policy of light touch regulation. In other words, we'll trust you to do the right thing, Mr. Quarry owner. And it just didn't happen. It was like putting children into a sweetie shop and saying, please don't touch the sweets and we'll leave you to it. It just didn't happen, and shortcuts were taken. And we ended up in the mess we were in. And we told government about it back in 2014. They did nothing about it. And we have had 8 years building houses with defective blocks on the back of it. So while government point to us and try to tell the story throughout the land that these people in Donegal are looking for taxpayers to pay up and do this, that, and the other, the reality is we told them about it. So the fact that we have a 2.2 billion euro bill ultimately to remediate these houses, the vast majority of that didn't need to be a cost to anybody if government had listened and did their job, but they didn't. And we're not prepared to let them off the hook until we get 100% redress. So that was it. We were very united. We were very focused. We were very driven. And we appealed to a lot of people, the ordinary people on the street. And it was just not at a national level, but also at an international level. And we have people all over the States. We have people in Australia. We were on Euronews. We captured a lot of imaginations out there, because it became something that any homeowner, any part of the country, or any country in Europe or elsewhere, could be in this exact same situation through no fault of their own, and just because of lack of regulation by government and their the state bodies that were responsible for this. So I think that did appeal to a lot of people. I think the imagery is very important too. We made it, you know, this is ordinary people telling their stories, and we got them to put videos together, get it out there, and we backed them, and we got it on our social platforms, social media platforms, and all the rest. And I think the imagery part is very, very important, and the story from the heart, from the homeowner directly. I think all of that contributed, Kevin, to what we see as a pretty successful campaign.
Absolutely fascinating, Michael, and so well told. Just very so interesting. What really occurs to me from what all of the speakers have said today is that there's just a very visible common pattern between what everybody's talking about, you know, and what it seems to me to be is the blatant prioritization of private profit over public public need, you know, and it's something that, you know, whether it be the case of the you know, the expansionary nursing home system, Dermot, as Dermot was talking about, or direct provision centers, or dodgy building contractors, Michael, as I believe you're referring to. It's the, not only, I mean, it's inevitable that these groups are going to try to enlarge their revenue as much as possible, but it is a clear failing of our government, I think, that it is overlooked and sometimes even acknowledged and accepted because of whatever reasons, you know, because of private interests, because of a lack of willingness to actually represent the population and their electorate. So I think that for me is the reason it's definitely the reason that I joined CATU, is the kind of identification that it was relying on the perennial electoral system of going to the ballot box and writing an X next to someone's name never struck me as fulfilling my obligations, I think, and my duties as a person who believes in upholding democracy. And it's so clear to me that that's what the speakers here today are saying too. It's about empowering people to be able to fight their own battles because they know their own situations best. And the solidarity that I see between the existing organizations is just fills my heart with joy as well. And I feel reaffirmed every day, I think, that I'm making the right call, that I'm spending my time wisely, and that it's just, I'm so glad to be speaking to everyone here today. I really am. And I would probably, I suppose, in that vein, put the question back at you, all three speakers here today, and say, what do you think is the one link that you would identify between all of these struggles? Whoever would like to go first.
Okay, I'll go first. As they say, ladies first. Honestly, the commonality between the three organizations that are here, we can see the government that is failing us in our different areas of our lives, and the government that does not show willpower to change people's circumstances. So that is the main problem that we are all facing as individuals, whether Irish-born people or people who are seeking asylum in Ireland. In every way, the government is there not doing what it's supposed to do for the people, which is give them dignity and be just in everything that they do, really, and respect our human rights. Thanks.
Maybe if I can come in again very briefly, I think one common theme that we'll all have is a lot of the time, and rightly so, we look to the politicians and we give the politicians a hard time, and rightly so. But what I have found, and I'm dealing with these guys now on a daily basis, the real permanent government is the civil servants. And that is what I see as the biggest obstacle. I have a lot of dealings with Minister Darragh O'Brien, Kevin Dillon, the special advisor, the housing agency, and so on. And although they will never admit it, what I see happening all the time is even when we have them convinced of something that's needing done, they're reluctant to commit. And I think part of the reluctance to commit is that they meet a wall of resistance from the departments. And I'm only dealing with the housing department in that regard, but I couldn't honestly see how the culture would be much different in any of the departments. And I think we will all face that same challenge. We'll come along, we will have government ministers that are too proud to say that really a lot of the time the tail is wagging the dog here. But the reality is that the departments is a big problem. Yeah.
I agree with you there 100% there, because my experience dealing with civil servants over the years is that there's a wall there. They're very conservative about issues, really, because we were trying to make changes in the Disability Act and other issues like that, really. Have a rights-based Disability Act in 2005, and we were nearly there, and civil servants and politicians were in favour of it, like, but the civil servants were completely against it, really, because once you start giving rights to people, really, they felt there was no end to it, really. They couldn't see an end to it, really. I mean, they were talking about farmers having rights to property and all that business, and they were making comparison to that. and the right to private property. You know, we were talking about 40 different rights. We were talking about the right to get onto a bus, the right to be able to live in a house where it's accessible, really, the right to third level education. Simple enough things, and you know, for people that are able-bodied every other day, like really, that's what we were talking about, really. And they didn't seem to want to get it. I know it really boggles my mind, really. The blockage that were there by the civil servants, really. And the Lunacy Act, for example, the Lunacy Act, which was in 18 something, right? It took them up to recently to get that off the statute books, really. So I mean, there is a lot of conservatism within the civil service itself. Definitely, I agree with you, Mike.
Yeah. Well, if there's any comfort in it, I actually, in Mike Action Group, we had a meeting with the Taoiseach today in Donegal. So we had him up here. We know he's got a limited tenure left. I think it's September, October. There'll be a change of guard again where he hands the baton over. And I think at this point in time, he's bound to be thinking about legacy and what is it history will look back on him as having done for his short and relatively short tenure because of the arrangement that they have between the two parties, lead parties. So I don't know. I think the time is right. I think we need to be really focused in this window ahead and see what we can nail down, because I've never seen a leader yet at that level that's not interested in their legacy. So I think that'll do it. So we certainly have a lot of business to finalize with him before he hands over the baton. So I would say anybody that thinks there's anything out there, I would, you know, be conscious of the fact that there's a very time limited window where we have Michael Martin still as Taoiseach, and take advantage of that.
Michael, can I ask you there, as regards living in your house, etc.? Describe your house to us.
Well, my house is built on our little farm that's been in our name for generations here in Donegal. It looks over Kildare Bay. It's beautiful. It's about 20 miles short of Malin Head, most northerly point in Ireland. And I built this with the view that this would be here for my grandchildren, their grandchildren, maybe beyond that. I work 12-hour shifts, day shifts, night shifts. My wife's worked full time as well. We have 4 kids. I've never had a day's dole in my life. We thought we were doing everything right. We worked hard, but we were lucky. We never were hit with any big sicknesses or any big unfortunate events that would have detracted from working hard and, you know, gleaming the treats that you get in life from that, where we were able to build a nice, comfortable home for ourselves. 2 years left in the mortgage, never missed a mortgage payment. And I'm now staring down the barrel of about €100,000 of a shortfall that I have to find at 55 years of age. So I'm basically taking out a second mortgage for the same home through no fault of our own. So my home right now, you can't heat it. We're in an area where, you know, we still, you know, it's still an oil-fired central heat and all that. This house was built 22 years ago. So it was the regulations pertaining at that time. You can't heat the home now because it's just too drafty. At night, you hear the wind whistling through the house. Thankfully, the kids are at an age now where 2 of them are at college. When they come back, those rooms in the house we can use, those rooms we can't. And that's the reality now. So the home is more like a fridge. We really look forward to good weather for many reasons, but that's one of them, to help keep the house a little bit warmer. But, you know, my house is not bad compared to some of them. That said, I can put my fingers right through the cracks into the insulation, right through the front wall. And if I wanted to, I could comb out the gravel to the block with my hand all the way through to the insulation, tear out the insulation with my hand and tear a hole right the way through. That's how weak our walls are. We talk about Weetabix blocks because that's exactly what they're like. And if you look at the videos, you'll see it for yourselves. So I have a home that I will probably get one more Christmas out of, and then we have to move on.
Yeah,
Can I come in, Kevin?
Of course you can. Go ahead, and Paul.
So I hear Damon and Michael's kind of agreeing that the civil servants probably are the ones who don't show willpower. So I'm feeling like as the asylum seekers in Ireland are actually getting, it's more like now they are fighting, like they are facing a two-sword kind of situation, because we are experiencing resistance in actual fact from the actual top range here, like ministers and all. We can see that now that there's no willpower really for them to change the system for asylum seekers, because immediately when there's the Ukrainian crisis, we see them just like that changing policy, which means that they actually can change the policy. So I want to believe that they can actually influence these other ones further down below them to kind of work with us. So I feel like maybe with us, then our problem on that level might be different, because we actually don't have the support from the very top, even though they may be pretension, maybe here and there, like they would want to do things for us, but talking about the problems of housing and all other problems that we know. But generally, we have seen that shift now, and that has proven to us that so this problem is actually man-made. If they wanted to change it, they could have changed it. So for me, I feel like the problem is right at the top. So if the system changes right from the top, and the willpower and the mindset starting there, maybe there would be a shift from going kind of trickling down, you know.
Tell me there what you're talking about the UN convention. There is a UN convention on refugees and asylum seekers. What's the regulations around that? To inform people in terms of accessing what you need to access housing. They talked about accessing housing, and you have your own door, your own key there in the last couple of months. How is that progressing?
For us here for people in the system?
Yeah.
There's no progression thus far. I think the issue with the convention is there with sort of like an overall what should happen, but it hasn't really broken down how the things should be done at grassroots level, so much that when you look at the refugee processes in different EU countries, each country has its own policy that they do, because the convention has just given an umbrella kind of how they should operate. Okay. So I think that's where maybe the problem is, because it doesn't exactly outline step by step how protection should take place. So for instance, the Irish government can argue that they've given us accommodation, no matter how substandard it is, but they are giving us accommodation, which is what the convention say. It doesn't necessarily say give them their own door homes, you know. So yeah, I think if I'm getting what you were asking, so that's where the challenge may be. Okay, thank you. That's
what I'm asking, yeah. And I know from the disability movement over the years, when the last one was 2016, we protested outside Dáil, and we sat outside Dáil for 2 nights, really. And that brought attention to a number of things that we want to get done, really. But it does require that level of campaigning, really. And it's like what the micro group, they're very impressive with your protest in Dublin, your tour protest in Dublin. And that's what we tried to do back in the last one, 2016, to protest outside Dáil. And you've right to the local authority. Now, locally here in the local authority, say in County Clare, where I live now, right? We're in regular contact with our local TDs, right? And we're in regular contact with our county councillors, which is good because we built up a relationship with them. So we know and we campaign any around issues that we want to raise. But the big one, then, as I said earlier on, is the personal assistance legislation, the PAs now. And next Tuesday, we're having a big national campaign around the personal assistance next Tuesday. So we'll hopefully that you keep that in mind, and that you'll obviously, whatever you can do there from your end, we'd appreciate it. Next Tuesday, the 5th of April. Yeah.
Of course, Dermot. Yeah, we'd be happy to put the word out as well, just as far as our reach goes in our own union. Empo, if you would mind me picking your brain again, just because your input is just so fascinating. Another question we'd have is, many people who are granted asylum face an additional barrier for family reunification, as they need to find housing deemed adequate for their family on their own on the private market before they can bring their relatives to Ireland. For example, the government's new Afghan admission program. There are also refugee families who end up homeless after being reunified, as they're evicted for overcrowding, being unable to source suitable accommodation for a larger family. Have you worked with people in these kinds of situations? What changes would be, in your view, necessary in current policies in order to address this major issue? And how can we as a community union focus on housing, best support and fight alongside people in these situations?
I didn't get you quite well there. My network is buffering, but if I had you right, you're talking about people who qualify for family reunification, whose families have arrived, but now they are facing a challenge of being in smaller spaces, right?
Exactly.
I think the problem starts with when somebody, I feel like people, when they qualify for family reunification or they get their refugee status, which means they qualify for family reunification, they should be allowed to look for spaces that allow them to cater for those people when they arrive. But unfortunately, currently, that is not the case. I'll make an example. If I was alone here in Ireland and I get refugee status, and I would be moving to a single bedroom house, a bachelor's pet kind of. So if I bring my 3 or 4 kids here, it means we are all going to be cramped up in that one room. We have to start the process of applying for a bigger house when they are already here, which goes against what the current landlord would have signed up for. So the minute in a small house, people bring like 4 or 5, it depends on how large the families are. And knowing how difficult it is to get a house, it means such people are at risk of being evicted by the landlords whose houses they're occupying at the time when their families join them. So I feel like what needs to happen really is like they already know this Mpo, for example, has 5 children who will be joining her within a year or something like that. So allow her to cater for those people before they even arrive. I feel like that's the right thing to do, instead of putting them in another situation that's going to put their lives at risk again when the family joins them. Because as it stands, it's difficult to find accommodation. So if the people are there and in a small place, then they get in trouble with whoever is renting to them at that time. So I think that's what should happen.
Yeah. No, that I can completely see your point. Nora, it seems that Nora might have a question.
Yes, thanks very much for all your explanation. In fact, I wanted to know more about this because I also think it is not fair on families who have whose asylum application has been approved to actually have to source this accommodation at market price on the private market, because I have heard recently of many families who are just unable to actually bring the family members because they cannot find something they can afford, you know, that's of that size, you know. So yeah, I think your explanation just shows how absurd this whole process is. But what I would like to emphasize here is that you said something earlier that I thought was amazing, about how it's not only your problem, it is our problem too. And I think this is something really important in the 3 struggles that we have heard of here, that often if you are in direct provision or you've been granted asylum, you want to reunify your family, or also if you are living with a serious disability, or if your house has fallen apart, you are already exhausted often by the circumstances of your own life. And this is why you need the support of everyone else as well, but the kind of support that respects your agency and the wishes of those directly concerned. And I think this is the main reason why we wanted you here to talk to us, because I think the aim of our union is to both, you know, not overstep over the wishes and needs of those directly concerned, but also to you know, delegate a bit of this exhaustion, because I thought your point was extremely relevant. It's like direct provision is not a problem of people in direct provision. It is a problem for all of us. And the same with all the other topics that were brought forward today. So yeah, thanks very much for that.
Thank you, Nora.
Thanks, guys. I'm going to ask a question from the YouTube comments that the commenter is probably wondering why I haven't asked yet. Just been sitting on it. So this goes out to all three of you. I might start with Michael, to Dermot, to Impo. So if these struggles all have common targets in the government and civil service and common causes, you know, favoring profit over housing security, how do we combine our efforts most effectively?
Yeah, is that to me, Kevin?
Yeah, you can feel free to start.
Yeah, I would have to think about that one, to be honest with you, because you know, we have 7,000 homes in Donegal, probably 2,000 in Mayo. We still have Sligo, we still have Tipperary, we still have Limerick and Clare, and they're really at they're just, you know, further down the curve than we are at this stage, and we're spending an awful lot of time with other counties trying to bring them up to speed in the campaign as well, and working with them, particularly Mayo at the minute, but certainly others to come very shortly. And bandwidth wise, you know, we certainly are. It's a full bus at the minute. I think for us, we have got big goals over. We've got a scheme that is currently being revised to an enhanced scheme. The parliamentary draftsmen are currently putting that together, and we have got probably a window of 2 to 3 months here now to see what the end game looks like. To be honest, and there's no point in me saying something on here that I wouldn't be able to stand over, but I don't see us having bandwidth to do much else other than nail this in front of us right now, because it's not just for Donegal, my particular county, it's for the other affected counties that we know of, and other counties yet to be discovered. At the end of all that, are there lessons to be learned? Are there experiences there that we could share? Are there things we could maybe look to get involved in some capacity, even if it's an advisory capacity? Absolutely. But being honest about it, we just don't have we don't have a minute right now because of the workload associated with this. It's a 2.2 billion euro scheme, and we have a department that's trying to ensure that the maximum possible cost is passed on to the homeowner. And we're obviously polar opposites there. We're trying to ensure that the homeowner is out as little as possible, because it was never their fault in the first place. So, being honest, we wouldn't have the bandwidth to do much between now, probably September, October. I would like to think our campaign should be fairly well nailed at that stage, and then, you know, who knows from there.
Yeah, there's a lot in that now, Kevin, really. I would say if you want to show solidarity with people with disabilities, is that we clearly very much against the whole charity model, really. And while we are in Ireland, we're very accustomed to giving money to charity, and regularly the Sunday gate collections for Spina Bifida or the Irish Wheelchair Association is not to be giving money to them organisations, really. That's what we're saying there very clearly. We're also saying that in any sense of solidarity you can give, really, in terms of supporting people with disabilities to live independently and to have choices, and to get support, really, in terms of personal assistance, and obviously to access education and access to housing. Because as I said earlier on there, Kevin and Mo, I can't pronounce your first name, Mo, is it? Yeah, there are other speaker there, that in terms of solidarity, yes, we'd like to give solidarity, and we'd like to show solidarity and respect to what you're doing, really. It's important that we show each other respect. That's very important. Well, just from point of view of people with disabilities, you know, as I said, there were 600,000 people with disabilities. I wish we were all united. We're not united, because we have, there's a lot of us kind of agree on similar things, but we're not. We're a very strange country if we were united, really, you know. And when you look at the Irish Farmers organizations like that, where even after they have two different organizations nationally. So we're trying to build up an organization where we have the sole voice for the people with disabilities independent living movement. So we're getting there bit by bit, but we show respect to each other. That's what we can show, and solidarity where we can show solidarity. but otherwise it'll what level I'm using there now. It'll dissipate our energy and the whole lot, because ours is a constant campaign, and so are your campaigns as well, constant campaign. But we definitely will show whenever we can solidarity, when we can show solidarity.
If I can come in there, I really have just one word: solidarity. Because if I can borrow Michael's words earlier, I remember if I heard him right in the first time he spoke, he talked about how their movement succeeded because they were all united. So I feel like if all movements in Ireland fighting for the same cause, if we could all unite and not put the other ahead of the another one, we all want one thing at the end of the day. So if we could all work together in harmony and unite, we could really achieve a lot. Like I'm saying, Michael mentioned earlier, the success of their movement was because of their unity. So now we seem to all be fighting our own battles in our own corners. And I think for people like myself, even though I'm now out of direct provision, for us to the war is even stronger, because now we are being fought as outsiders. So the support of the Irish people would take us even further. That is why I believe that the solidarity is what we need. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I think that last point paves the way beautifully for another question from the chat. The initial part is directed particularly towards Michael. So, Michael, you mentioned that people initially felt ashamed and that the situation that they found themselves in was their own fault. Would you, Fia would be interested to see, in your opinion, as to why that started to change. So what do you think what do you think accounts for that?
Well, I'm being brutally honest. I don't think Mike Axgroup can take credit for that. I think that goes back to Paddy Dover, because we didn't have the same impact, and probably because we didn't take the same direct action. And if I was to be completely straight about it, I think the direct action by Paddy Dover that said he, for one, did nothing wrong. He knew that. He travelled over and back to England and saved his wages to build his house as best he could. There was absolutely nothing that he did wrong. And he was able to call that out. And I think that caused a lot of people then to reflect upon themselves and say, well, I didn't do anything wrong either. There was almost a sense that, did you buy cheap materials? Did you take shortcuts? But the answer really was no, no, and no to all them questions. But I think, people take a lot of pride in their home, and the fact that their home was defective, they almost saw it a reflection of a failure on their own part. And that was the first, that was the initial thoughts that many people carried. And I think Paddy done a good job of relieving people of that burden and pointing the finger to where it went wrong. And it went wrong at state level because of Celtic Tiger greed. And that was the bottom line. So I think when people got that and then saw a man that was prepared to stand up and be counted and, block the lorries and do the direct action part, I have no doubt brought a lot of credibility to the campaign, and people could relate to it. And I think on the back of that, we started to think we've done nothing wrong here. And you know what? It's not good enough that wrong was done to us either. And, we should not have to pay for this a second time. And we mobilized accordingly, Now, we were on the road, like I say, for a long time. We already had a campaign before ever Paddy Dover came along. But it, like I said, it was a 90-10 screwed down to a 60-40, made it completely unreachable for most people. And then the desperation kicked in, and it's amazing what can be done and how people will mobilize. When you've, put a couple of things together that works, to my mind, the bravery, the courage to go and say it, and not only say it, but follow up with direct action. And then secondly, the ability to ensure not a positive spin, because it sounds almost too political, but just making sure that how we did things and what we did brought with us the best possible chance of positive publicity. And we know that any action can have either a positive or negative effect, from a publicity point of view, but we were careful in what we did. We were quite close to the line a lot of times, but we stayed on the right side of that line. And I think we were respected for that. And what we did was done with dignity, but it was done with a lot of, simmering anger underneath that was palpable, and a lot of people could relate. And I think politicians could relate that it wouldn't take a lot for this to actually boil over, and nobody wanted that. And we still have that situation today, where we could still be back in Dublin in 25 or 30,000 people in terms of numbers. And what we don't do is say something and not do it. Anything we've said so far, we've followed through on, and that's important. So we don't bite off more than we can chew, but what we say we're going to do, we do. And I think we have credibility on the back of that. And to be honest, there is nervousness among others out there when we say we're going to do something, because they just know it's a matter of time. And what we have said is if we have to do it, we will be back in Dublin, but we really don't want to be there. And we'll not go back to do things the way we've done it before. We've had 2 goals at the peaceful protest. And to be honest, if we go back the next time, Dublin will have to come to a standstill. And I believe we can still come out the right side of that from a publicity perspective, because people know we've done all the right things the right ways. But it has to escalate. It cannot be more of the same. The definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, that has never been our campaign. And it's watch this space every time. And I think that edge is important.
I think you're completely right, Michael. I think that the ability that your group has shown in meeting its own objectives and ambitions that it has set is one of the key reasons that your group has been such an example to us in CATU. Fia did ask as a second part of his question, and this is addressed to all speakers, how do we overcome our problems being seen as individual failures? If whoever would like to weigh in on this first, do feel free. I would like to hear what you've all got to say. How do we overcome our problems? Are you talking about? Specifically, how do we overcome our problems being seen as individual failures? As failures of the individual, maybe making bad choices, or not acting accordingly, and your economic situation or housing situation being a result of that. Well, I would reject that really, that statement, because from the point of view of people with disabilities, nobody wants to end up with a disability, and we are here now. So anyone that with disability, we are here at this stage. I mean, doctors are not going to fix it or repair it. So we've got to get on with our lives. So what we need with our lives is support around what we want to do with our lives, really. There's a lot of people with disabilities that want to do lots of different things. And because the buses may not be accessible, or they may not have been allowed to get the third level education, or they may not have accessible to good accommodation or any accommodation, really. They probably might be living with their families, etc., which wouldn't be suitable at all. For you to grow as a human being, as an adult, to grow and to get on with your life, and to make mistakes, and to live and to learn as well. So that's, I do reject that question, really. I don't think it's appropriate for the question, the answer. Just before we continue with other speakers, I'd be interested to see, Nora, I believe, has another question. I'm just curious to hear about that.
Oh, sorry, Dermot. I think to clarify the meaning of the original question that was asked was more about the way sometimes, the social welfare makes you feel. Or for instance, I've known it myself, industrial workers who had an injury and are applying for disability benefit, and they are made to go through this incessant burden of proof to show that they are worthy of help. So the question, I think the way I saw it was not meant to say that there was any fault in anyone's situation. It's just that sometimes this sort of charity approach or it makes you feel as if you have to prove that you are really deserving of what is actually a human right.
I know a lot of people well educated with disabilities that use wheelchairs, really, and try to get jobs, and they haven't got the jobs, and basically discrimination, really.
Yeah, it is indeed. And this is
attitude,
what the question I wanted to follow up on, and it's specifically for you, Dermot, and for Info, is how can we as a union, from your two respective points of view, can make our union more welcoming and make the possibility for people with disabilities or with people who are asylum seekers and might have obstacles, even in terms of legal documentation and so on. How can we make the union more welcoming, and how can we make people from categories that are often excluded in the overall society more likely to engage with us? What are the steps in your vision that we can take as a union to make engagement easier for the groups that you are each representing here today? Not
for
representing.
example, now, there's deaf people there. There's a percentage of the population that are deaf, right? So sign language is important. The staff group. There are people that are visually impaired, right? I know people visually impaired. Technology has been a huge bonus to them, really, been a huge addition to them as well. So making their stuff accessible as well, which is very important. And for people with physical disabilities, if you were to go to meetings, to make sure the place is accessible, and obviously to understand for people in your group, for your organization, to understand it's not pity we're looking for, it's just inclusion and participation we're looking for.
I may come in there. You know, in direct provision as it is, it's already like a problem, like the institution itself. And within that institution, we have people living with disabilities. So that means we have people with double kind of struggle because they don't have equal access. I know people, as Damon was saying, people in Ireland living with disabilities don't have access to a lot of things. So the ones in direct provision don't have access to it, and they're not even included in any system. They are struggling to get anything, you know, out of in terms of state support in that regard. So it's really stressful, and I don't even know how much or what I can say or how you guys can come in to help there. But as it is, that's the main problem, because we have people living with disability in indirect provision, but they're not necessarily treated as people living with disability because they are indirect provision, and therefore they don't have the same support, that minimal support that the ones outside may have, they don't have. So they become it's all on their families. If their children or their members of the families, it's all on them to survive on whatever resources are available to them at that point in time. So it's quite a tricky one. I really don't even know what I can suggest that you can do for them, for us there. So, but that's a problem that we have, apart from the other problems that we have.
I don't know if I can add much value to this particular aspect of it, but I do have a sister who's the CEO for Donegal Centre for Independent Living. She's very, very passionate about the whole disability sector and the need for independent living. That's really what she's about. She set up.
I know her. Yeah.
That's
I know
a
her.
sister of mine, and yeah.
Yeah, I know her.
Yeah. So as you'll know, she's been actively involved all over the country before settling in her home Donegal then and taking on that position. But what I would say to anybody, regardless of the situation, have to look into their own hearts and say, what I'm facing, is this a result of my poor self-management, or is this a result of what has been inflicted upon me? And if it's the latter, then you're saying I have done absolutely nothing wrong, and I have entitlements in the back of that, and I need to fight for them entitlements because I have to have my place on this earth, fulfill my role, my wishes, my dreams on this earth, just with the same rights as anybody else. That'll be the first thing. And even if it's the former and it's down to previous decisions or maybe bad decisions, that should not dictate what the rest of somebody's life looks like. So if they're prepared to participate in whatever is required to, I am also a great believer in self-help, by the way. I do believe you've got to help yourself as well. It can't always be a case that you get lifted and laid, but certainly when you've arrived at a point, regardless of previous decisions, where you're saying, I need to move forward, I want to move forward, then everybody in life deserves the opportunity to move forward. And then it's down to what supports are required to make that happen. And they become entitlements. They become entitlements, and it shouldn't be something that anybody's ashamed to ask for. And that's from my view. And that would be, now again, I'm saying this out of probably more having listened to my sister over the years, and we're all out of the one family. We would all think very much the same way. I happen to be in a different work stream to what Rosaline is, but very much shared views. We work hard. We do all the right things. We help each other along the way, and where things are thrown in our way that makes life more difficult than what it ought to be, then we have every right to seek that obstacle to be removed and demand that, and demand our rights as we go through life. That's able-bodied, disabled, whatever the case may be. That would be my view on it, my tuppence worth on it.
I think that's extremely well put, Michael. I can see that Lucky has raised their hand in the chat. Would you like to weigh in, Lucky?
Thank you. I just wanted to support what Paul was saying and add also on what you can do with us, as we are a grassroots organization, Mercy, and it starts with what we are doing right now. Solidarity chats about knowing these struggles that we are going through, and with the hope that once the knowledge is out there, the power which CATU has, which we don't have, can use to influence some of these policies that infringe us of these rights and benefits that people, especially people with disability, who face so much difficulties in direct provision. As people know that there is what they call now vulnerability assessment for people, okay? So, but we still see problems with regard to the allocation of the place where people who have disability must stay, where they can have access. I was in a center a few years ago whereby they allocated a person who has no mobility on the first floor, and there was not a lift. So until we had to, take it up with the officials. So the lack of understanding of the people that deal with the people in direct provision is an issue. Last month, for instance, we had to step in when a lady who was an asylum seeker who came from a certain country, and she needed a wheelchair because she could not use her left hand, and she had one leg amputated, and we had to step in to get her an electric chair, which is something that is supposed to have been provided for her because she was here in this country for 6 months, struggling to maneuver at the town in Balsaskin because of that. And also one of the things that can be of assistance to people that seek protection, as you know now that people have got the right to work, okay, and there's a lot of exploitation from these firms that people work in, and unfair dismissal that we see now and then, and people are stuck with not knowing what to do in terms of addressing that issue. So that is where the likes of CATU can come and be of great help and great ally far as addressing the workforce and the rights of the people of the workers who are living in direct provision as asylum seekers, who are still marginalized and victimized because of the fact that they are asylum seekers. They can just issue a letter without any warning before to say that your services are no longer needed. So those things are the things that can be of practical solidarity work from your side. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Lucky. That's an incredibly valuable point. I'm very glad that you weighed in with that. I'm becoming a little bit conscious of time. So what I might ask at this point is if any of our speakers today have any questions for anybody else that has spoken, either on the basis of something already been said or something that hasn't, please feel free to do so. I think we'd all be fascinated to hear what those could be.
No, the only point I would make, again, like I said, I think we are going to be pretty much tied up here all the way through now to autumn time. But certainly I'm happy to take a call or take an email or have a chat with anyone that feels that I might have something of any value to them in terms of either the campaign or how we've done things, or whatever the case may be. Certainly happy to do that. And Kevin, you can work out how best the details. I can send them to yourself or whatever, but yeah, happy to help.
Yeah, we have.
From here, okay. I think as we know, there's the proposal to end direct provision by 2024. Currently, we have not seen any progress that we can talk about that shows that we are moving towards the right direction because it won't be a process that just happens overnight. There has to be some steps that lead towards that, and we haven't seen anything or much of that currently. And so, and with the current situation also of the Ukrainian crisis, I suspect that that has been shoved somewhere, is no longer in the process of, if it was ever in the process. So it would be very important that if we keep raising awareness and fighting towards that, because direct provision has to end, because it's not fit for purpose. People are not living freely there, people are being abused, and all sorts of human injustices taking place. So we, as Mercy, I think would need to would appreciate the support to help us to fight the system of direct provision to end, and to hold the government accountable for the promise that they've made to end direct provision by 2024, and to see how they plan to do that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we're having a couple of campaigns coming up now, one next Tuesday and another one in May, the 5th of May, I think, really. And it's called PAs Now. So we're trying to lobby all our local TDs and councillors and trying to get the legislation in Dáil for a personal assistance legislation that will embed the whole personal assistance in legislation for us. And just to say to my colleagues there, Clare Immigrants, I'm very in contact with the Clare Immigrant Support System here in Clare on a regular basis, here in Nennis. So I know the people involved, and we're constant contact with each other, because I do the community radio as well. And I've interviewed only recently on my community radio, the manager there, about refugees and asylum seekers in Clare. And they opened the front door key policy, really, so that's important. As regards to MICA, yes, the local paper here covered the MICA thing there a couple of weeks ago, extensively now, a couple of people extensively, and they got great coverage with the local radio and stuff like that, and a couple of the politicians. So I mean, it's quite shocking, really. I mean, I can't even imagine how you could live in a house or be part of a household that MICA has affected your house. And I'm just wondering there, Michael, in terms of taking on the people that provided the blocks. What's the legislation around that really? Have you thought about taking on anybody of court, or are the companies closed down, or what?
Yeah, well, as I said earlier, the company's closed down, Dermot, only because our boycott campaign left them with no customers, not because any authorities closed them down, embarrassingly.
Would that be the same in Clare now? Would that be the same in Clare?
Yeah, well, I'm not aware of any other quarries haven't been closed down. Now, they may have got their act together, before things come crashing down on them. But I'm not aware of any other quarries that were actually closed on the back of this. But regards to regulations and the possibility of legal action, there is a team looking at legal action, but it's an expensive process, and that sort of lack of class action that can be taken in Ireland makes it extremely difficult then. And but we are looking at that, and we have a couple of big sponsors as well that really feel for the people involved, and there is another leg of the campaign looking at that, and we'll probably take about 200 names forward in some sort of miniature class action and see how that goes. But unfortunately, legal route takes some time, and many of these homes, time is something that they don't have.
Thanks very much, everyone. I know that for, again, speaking on behalf of CATU, I know that we're going to be in contact with these speakers going forward. We're going to be trying to build these ties and trying to consolidate the links that we've established today. We just had an AGM today. I think speakers might be interested to hear that we've passed certain motions trying to increase our own accessibility, such as we have waived union dues, for example, for anyone that does live in direct provision, to not to let a financial prohibition stop anyone from joining. Also, we've passed a mandate to develop CATU's materials in foreign languages and to build a membership base and engagement among tenants who are non-native English speakers. So I think that with the increased information that we're privy to and that we're lucky enough to be hearing, I think that will only continue to grow and develop and to become more accessible. And I can really only think to end this fascinating dialogue with a quote from a personal hero of mine, Fred Hampton, who said, "Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people, and we're going to have to put it back in the hands of the people." So
Kevin, can I ask you a question, Kevin?
Go ahead.
What have you achieved in the last 12 months?
Well, do you mean nationally or down to our local branches?
Nationally, sir, nationally. Have you affected any change?
No, I've seen the change personally, Dermot. I've been lucky, again, fortunate enough to see with my own eyes, I suppose, the events that don't get reported in media, local or otherwise. Speaking on from my part and what we've done in Cork, we've taken a number of membership defence cases. We have prevented people from being evicted on numerous occasions now. I think Nisha mentioned at the beginning how we've basically doubled the amount of revenue and greatly increased the amount of people who have been hearing about tenants unions. I've seen with my own eyes the change that even hearing about a tenants union actually has on people, and I've seen communities, streets, entire like swathes of people just, I suppose, drawn back from complete alienation and complete isolation. And I've seen them sit down in meetings. I've seen people set up texting lists, again, with the purpose of either resisting an eviction, or it might be something like local trade. I think we've all probably seen at some point in our lives how, due to squalid living conditions, people have are just, again, we're talking about people living in squalor due to the fact that landlords are given primary responsibility over the properties of tenants. So another measure that we've taken is that, again, for anybody able-bodied tradesmen or anybody kind of involved in kind of the upkeep of properties, that they're the ones who are actually carrying out the investigations, and they're participating in helping to be the ones to actually draft letters to local authorities and to landlords directly. So I think that it's hard for me, I suppose, to articulate the scale to which I've seen the success, but I think that I think honestly CATU has really achieved an enormous amount. If anybody else that's present from here would like to weigh in as well, do feel free. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's actually hard. It's almost, I don't even know where to stop. You know, it's just more of a problem, I guess.
If I can pitch in, so Dermot, I would say that our union is still young, and a lot of its growth has been also during the lockdowns. So we are still getting back on the streets now, because that's where we should be, you know, like actually involved in real life. But in the past few months, we've blocked numerous evictions, sometimes in very difficult situations where it was vulture funds that had bought houses from basically landlords that were defaulting on the mortgage. And then it's basically you're fighting against very impersonal entities, and still with sometimes quite compact but determined groups of members in local branches. Such evictions were stopped. We have helped our members get their deposits back. We have helped, well, in Cork recently, we had a case where we stopped an eviction where the landlord was a total slumlord, and people who had been left cooking on an open fire because he had stolen the electric fuses. And we managed to basically convince that landlord to actually give them a proper lease, reduce the rent, and sign the HAP forms. So a lot of our activity is based on direct action. And as the union grows and we build capacity, and our aim is to build a strong base in communities, then bigger campaigns can develop organically from these all these small actions that sort of help change the terms of the conversation in every local community. So basically, with every action we take, we are saying, no, this won't happen on our watch. No, we won't be abiding by these rules. We will build collective power and change the rules. So I think that's what all CATU members are doing in their local branches. So you have to give us time too, because we are young. Yeah. But like Kevin was saying, it's grown a lot, and it will keep growing because there's a need for it.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's probably a good place to leave it. Thanks again to everyone who showed up today, as well as everybody who tuned into the YouTube stream. It obviously means an incredible amount, and I think it shows above all the intrigue and the fascination that people have with the work that's being carried out today, and the disregard that people are willing to accept, the disregard, I should say, for the dominant philosophy of our time, again coming down to economic strife and squalor being the result of people's own individual failings. And I think that people now are more than ever, more than I've ever seen in my own personal lifetime anyway, ready to accept a systemic change, I think, that can once and for all just end this completely unjust, unequal, paternalistic system, which just doesn't work for the majority. And the work that's been done by the individuals here today is monumental, I think, in furthering our cause. And again, I can only just extend my enormous gratitude to everyone here. So I think we'll leave it there. Take care, everyone, and have a lovely evening.
Good night, lads. Thank you.
Thanks very much for coming, and we will send you the recording. We will send the recording to all the organizations for your record.
Thank you
for sharing. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Best of luck.